Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully you can all hear me. We have now started the webinar. Welcome to the second of our webinars for the EULAR Manifesto. To do a brief round of introductions, although you probably already know us, my name is Alexandra. I'm the EULAR Advocacy Manager, and I'm joined by my colleague Alex, our Advocacy Coordinator. And we also have Franz Green from our Public Affairs Agency, HECLA, who is here to answer any outstanding questions that you might have about the manifesto itself. We do have a brief presentation that we would like to show you, but for the most part, the way we envision this webinar going is to give you the space and the opportunity to ask any outstanding questions you might have. And this could be about the content of the manifesto or any of the material on the SharePoint, any issues you may have had with the SharePoint platform, as well as if you would like to share any of your experiences so far, what has worked, what hasn't, so that we can have this as more of a dialogue than just us really talking at you. So as kind of a means of update and also to give people the opportunity to still join if any people are still coming, I will just walk you through this very, very short presentation, starting with a recap. So in our last webinar, we talked a lot about the actual toolkit and the SharePoint platform, which if anyone still has any questions about, we can display and we can run through quickly so that you can get a sense of what there is. The recording of that webinar is also available to you. If you don't have access to the link or if you have lost the link, please just let us know and we could give it to you. But the SharePoint platform is available with all the translations and the materials there for your use. This includes the manifesto itself, the explainer document, which is quite a bit longer, which should be used as a kind of repository of information in case someone is interested in it. Templates of letters and emails for national politicians as well as for MEPs, and all of the translations as well, which has been done with DeepL Pro and in a couple of cases Google Translate, so they need to be verified by you just to make sure that they're good. And you've all been asked, if possible, to please log meetings with policymakers into the SharePoint so that we have an idea of who you've been in touch with and who has been successful at meeting whom. So that's kind of a short update. From a general overarching perspective, you may have seen this slide before, but I still wanted to bring it up again. The manifesto campaign is up and running. It's a year-long initiative, really, for all of us, with the launch being just part of it. There was a soft launch of the EULAR Manifesto on the 7th of April, which was World Health Day. And what that means is that it officially appeared on the EULAR website. There were a couple of social media posts that you may have seen that you could have possibly also reposted or retweeted yourselves about the manifesto. And we have intensified our outreach to MEPs, to potential committees, which we will be building up on in the later part of the year. And we are, of course, working with all of you in terms of making sure that the word gets out there. So initially, we wanted to have a breakfast event in March, like this older slide says. Unfortunately, because we're in the run-up to the European elections, that's not been possible. But we would like to have kind of a Brussels-based launch event in October, where we would also be trying to reactivate the European Parliamentary Interest Group on RMDs. And so Q3 and Q4 are going to be the most intense periods for our engagement, particularly because then the MEPs will be in place and we will get a sense of who's involved in what kind of policy and what kind of committee. Now, for the more tangible update from our end, you will see on the screen a bit of a list of the MEPs that we have managed to get endorsements from. And I think we can be proud of the list that we've gathered thus far, simply because it is quite broad in terms of being from different countries, from different parliamentary groups within the European Parliament. And we have been very happy with the level of engagement so far. If you consider that larger organizations working also to get endorsements for their manifesto are also around like perhaps 20 MEPs, and they have many more resources than we do, then having 11 of them are very good numbers. Of course, not all of them are probably going to stay in their functions. We've had one kind of a surprise that one of them actually resigned to end up being a minister in her home country. So that was this Portuguese MEP, Maria Carvalho. But the positive thing is that we do have the endorsement of this policymaker, and we can continue working with her, or potentially the national societies can continue working with the MEPs that don't stay in their functions and move back to national policy to see what we can do on that front. And so to come to the end of a very, very short presentation, we've put together a couple of questions maybe for you. And we would very happily kind of hand over the floor to all of you as well to see if there are any questions that you have regarding perhaps the content of the manifesto or the SharePoint platform. Have there been any issues, and can we help with anything? Have you had any examples that we could help with, or maybe some sort of best practice that we would be able to learn from? Because we're trying quite hard to make sure that we don't contact the same MEPs that you are already targeting, that we don't duplicate content, that we don't have exactly the same conversations over and over again. And we are also keen to learn from you, because we don't always have all of the answers. We try as much as we can, but sometimes it really is much, much better to have the kind of perspective from the national side of things. None at this point, no questions? All right. So, Alex, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to mention, because you pointed out the European Parliament interest group, which for those of you who do not know, is basically an informal group of members of the European Parliament that have the shared interest, in this case RMDs, and they meet several times a year. This group is co-chaired by MEPs from various political parties, and this makes interaction with them easier and more consistent, rather than reaching out to them one by one like we're doing now. But this is actually the point of us reaching out now, and also from your side as well, to get their endorsement, and then to ultimately possibly have some of them in this interest group that we were trying to revive after the European Parliament elections, because some of the people that we are contacting and you are contacting now are bound to be again members of the Parliament. This is one point that I wanted to mention.
Yes, I think that's very good to mention. And also, we have been trying to make sure that we keep in touch with all of them on kind of a long-term basis, and also see if we can reactivate them in order to get them to be part of the interest group. I think before I let Franz jump in, who's very helpfully showed himself on camera before I had the chance to call on him, I would maybe bring up two small points. And one is that we've had the question in the past of what an endorsement actually means. So for now, what an endorsement means is that the MEP or the policymaker has told us that they are in agreement with the content of the manifesto, they like it, and they are happy to get involved in spreading the message further. And there are many things that can potentially be done with the support. One of the biggest ones, of course, would be to join the interest group, because then we would be able to have the message spread wider within the context of the European Parliament itself. But there are also other possibilities, such as tweeting on it, posting about it on social media, getting kind of the word out there that the manifesto is set up. And for that reason, we've also been in touch with the various MEPs to make sure that they are okay with us talking about their endorsements on social media, seeing if we can get their permission to use their image, to use their name. And we will have a section with the names that you have just seen on the screen on the EULAR Manifesto webpage, so that we can also list who exactly is endorsing us. We've had a couple of kind of internal roadblocks on this, just to make sure that we have all the permissions covered, but we're making relatively good progress on that. So there will be some tweets going on from the EULAR channels to make sure that people are informed. Alex, did you want to say something? Or?
Yes, I just wanted to complement this with the endorsement. In practical terms, it means that the MEPs will have to sign a consent form that is pre-completed. They will just have to sign it and then return it, so that then we can proceed to put their picture and use their names on the website and ultimately post about them on social media. However, if they decide to in their conversation with you to endorse the manifesto, they can do so, of course, on their own social media channels without any prior approval and whatnot. That would actually be a fantastic thing for them to promote the manifesto and possibly tag EULAR or your organizations as well.
Okay, so at this point, Franz, do you want to share some insights into what we've been doing? I know you've not been asked to prepare anything, but I think maybe that's more interesting than just us talking about the internal EULAR side.
Well, I think I mean I think it can sort of be, there are different elements to it. There's obviously a key element is engaging with sort of current MEPs around the manifesto, and so there's obviously been quite a bit of work done there in trying to secure endorsements. And as you said at the beginning, I mean it's a fairly labor-intensive sort of exercise, in part because they're extremely busy at the moment because they're trying to sort of basically wrap up all the sort of the legislative work by the end of April. So it's been a fairly sort of it's been trickier than we sort of expected, just actually having the conversations. But overall, we're sort of very happy with the direction it's gone in. In parallel to that, we're also engaging with the other institutions, in particular with the sort of the European Commission. So we're in the process of sort of reaching out for the different relevant departments. They're not going to formally endorse the manifesto, but what we want to do is get our sort of policy asks onto their agenda and try and cultivate some sort of at this stage sort of informal sort of interest and support for those sort of asks. And again, I think we're sort of moving in a positive direction there. And then the third piece of the puzzle is talking to other organizations about the manifesto, because the way Brussels works is not dissimilar to sort of member states. It's the more organizations and different interests that support what you're asking for, the more likely the politicians are going to pay attention to that. And I think that overall that's gone pretty well. I think we had a very positive call with the European Cancer Organization yesterday, which is an umbrella organization for cancer sort of federations and associations in Europe, and that was an extremely sort of positive call. So those are the three main things that we're sort of doing at the Brussels level in relation to the manifesto. I think one element which we are sort of keen to move forward on is in terms of the sort of the member state level, particularly the sort of the upcoming sort of council presidencies.
Yes, that's actually a very valid point. So, Franz, correct me if I'm mistaken, that would be Denmark, Poland, and Cyprus.
Exactly. And for those who sort of for those who may not be aware of the way in which the sort of presidencies work, the presidency is basically the country that every 6 months the country has responsibility for sort of managing the EU agenda on behalf of the member states. And previously, the way it worked was, it would just, one country would pick up the baton and they do what they want for 6 months, and then another country would come in and they take over and then they do what they want for 6 months. But the system now has now changed. So what they do is three sort of presidencies are asked to sort of work quite closely together, so that there's continuity between the three presidencies in terms of their priorities and activities. And at the moment, it's a sort of Hungary is at the end of Hungary will be the sort of the final presidency in that trio, in the current trio at the end of this year. So for 2025 and the first half of 2026, the new trio is going to be, and I can't remember which order, but it is, as Alexandra said, it's Denmark, Cyprus, and Poland. So what we're quite keen to do is to engage with those three countries to see if we can, in some way or another, get their support or help, in relation to some of the asks within the manifesto. I think, Alexandra, maybe one sort of additional thing to sort of maybe ask people, and just follows up on your point about sort of lessons learned, because at the moment we're in the sort of phase one of the campaign, which is which from a Brussels perspective is focused on a limited number of sort of current MEPs. But the second phase will begin once the election's taken place, and some of those MEPs will disappear, probably around 50%. That it's expected to be around a sort of a 50% turnover. So there'll be 50% new intake of MEPs. So the next phase is going to be sort of focused on engaging with the new intake of MEPs, and then later in the year, the commission changes. So the different sort of national commissioners, they have a 5-year mandate, and not all of them will change, but a lot of them will change. And so again, with that change, it's a moment where they relook at the whole sort of political agenda for the European Commission for the next 5 years, and it's quite an important moment to try and engage with them to see if we can sort of get them to sort of support and push on some of our sort of research asks. And so I think this goes back to your question about sort of lessons learned, because I think we're in the sort of process of preparing for that second phase. And so it would be extremely helpful if anybody has any feedback in terms of, the toolkit and the materials provided to you for this first phase, to see whether they worked, what there was, any, what worked, didn't work, what might we change? Are there any things that we can sort of do differently to help better support you in terms of that second phase?
Would anyone like to comment at this point?
No news is maybe good news, but I'm always surprised. I mean, there are always things that can be improved. Maybe if anybody doesn't have any sort of immediate or doesn't want to share any immediate thoughts now, maybe it might be sort of just possibly to follow up with sort of the advocacy team afterwards, because as I say, we do want to hear anything that might help us sort of improve the sort of we have Geraldine.
Yes.
Geraldine. Sorry.
Yes. Well, we are busy in the Netherlands with it. What I have experienced is that it is quite a challenge to translate your letter, not the manifesto itself, but your letter into a letter that we are used to send in the Netherlands. We have to build the letter again in syntaxes and other things, because it's a very strict letter, and if we send it this way, no one will read it, quite simply. So we have done quite some time in changing the letter with the same information, but otherwise put so that people are interested to keep reading and to start reading. And that is something that took us some time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I take on board that comment. I mean, I think one of the sort of the challenges with it is, you know, I think those letters when they were drafted, the idea was to try and sort of produce something that would, you know, would be appropriate in most situations. And I think there are sort of, I think there are differences between, you know, I think national differences between, you know, in the way in which you might actually sort of, you know, approach a politician. I think in
Yes.
certain countries, I think it needs to be much more sort of in a much more cautious sort of formalistic way. Whereas I think in other countries, I think it, you know, it might need to be more sort of explicitly political and punchy. So yeah, so I mean, I think what we can do is we can certainly when we sort of prepare the sort of the next tranche of materials, maybe we need to move a bit further in that direction, particularly if other people have had a similar experience.
I think Fernando has his hand raised now as well. Please. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Good morning to everyone. I would like to know if it is in fact possible to adapt the letter to our perspective and to change a little bit to become more affordable for our politicians. Is it possible, or it is necessary to give you the last version before sending this letter?
So the letter you can adapt as you see fit. The only thing that can't be changed is the manifesto itself, because that needs to stay consistent. Otherwise, it stops being a EULAR document. It needs to stay with the wording it has. But the email, or however you approach your politicians, it's a guideline. You can communicate the message in whatever way you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Karina.
Yes, I agree totally with the other speakers, because in Germany we find the letter is very fixed and very stiff and inflexible, and it's now good to hear that we can change it and make it more politely for the politicians and so on. Thank you.
I think this is important feedback for us to hear as well, because it's just unfortunately not possible for us to understand the context and the politeness needed in every specific country. So the template letters and emails, they're all very general. You can do whatever you want with them. It's a suggestion. It's just really the manifesto itself that needs to stay as is. Yes, Anne, please.
And I think you're on mute.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So hi, it's Anne Kerola from Finland, and so I'm having two meetings with Finnish MEPs next week, and I'm trying to get endorsement, but and we are also planning on doing some social media posts by the organizations that are involved. But it might be nice if you could provide like some figures or images that we could use, and also provide for the MEPs if they would like to tweet or post something on Instagram. So I don't know if that would be possible. Thank you.
This is thank you for the question. This is something that we've also encountered internally, and it's why we also mentioned the consent form, because before we post as EULAR anything about endorsements, we need to have written permission from the MEPs that we can actually use their name and image. In terms of providing you with something, I think figures we can provide. It just depends which ones you would like. In terms of templates, we have asked the communications team this. We could ask again, but we are not allowed to share EULAR templates with MEPs. That being said, I think as long as we have content that is useful, it should be fairly easy to create something.
What I think what we have done is we haven't shared any sort of templates, but we have shared some you know, some social media content, some, you know, potential tweets and sort of data points with MEPs. So I don't see there's any issue in terms of sharing them with you, and you can in turn use them yourselves, and you know, with whatever branding, your own branding. And also I think our sort of experience with MEPs is, even if you send them a template, you know, your own organizational template, typically they don't want to use it anyway. They just want to cut and paste it into their own existing templates. So I think, you know, the sort of the social media content we sent to MEPs, I don't see there's any issue with you sharing it with whoever you're going to be, you know, you're meeting with.
I think that's fine. I think the main point there just is that they can't use the EULAR logo. That's the only thing that the communications team will really tell us about. But if you like, we could even share the social media collateral that's been created within the SharePoint, and then you can use it as you see fit. Alex, do you think there would be a problem with that?
I don't think so. We can yeah, offer them some facts and figures, and then they can use them as they like. Probably they're not going to be super tailored for the committee that the respective MEP is in, but I think it's still fine.
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, we can do that. The only caveat there is it's not an official EULAR template, and it shouldn't be considered an official EULAR template. But I think aside from that, we can provide that to use. Any other questions at this point or comments that we can clarify?
I think Fernando has his hand up.
Yes.
Or
Thank you. It's related with the friends and the preferable moment to start this interaction because we are having elections. So I suggest to start when do you suggest to start the contacts with the politicians?
I mean, I don't see an issue. You know, I think the earlier the better, frankly. You know, I think you know, most politicians at this point have got their eyes on the election, and I think from their perspective, you know, if they put out a tweet sort of endorsing the manifesto, then I think it's you know, I mean, it won't do them any harm in terms of positioning themselves with people with sort of RMDs. So I think this is quite a sort of a good moment to actually approach MEPs, because they're going to be receptive from that perspective. I think probably I think the only caveat to that is, I think once you get sort of, so the elections are sort of, I think it's the 8th, 9th of June, that sort of time frame. And I think if you're talking about sort of, you know, a couple of weeks before, you know, maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks before, then I think I wouldn't be doing it at that point, because I think it will, you know, the activity level will just be so intense in terms of the MEPs that, you know, they wouldn't, I doubt they would have the time to even sort of review the manifesto. So I think, you know, moving, you know, going now and over the next sort of, you know, I'd say up until sort of middle of May, I'd say, you know, great, you know, and no issue at all with that. I think it's a good time to do it. I think there's, you know, diminishing returns will sort of set in that sort of more immediate period before the election.
Okay, we'll try to start at that moment. Thank you so much.
I think, Franz, maybe one other thing we could explain a bit more is the interest group, and how the endorsement kind of maybe can lead into more interest in that, because I'm not sure everyone is familiar with the interest group and what it really means there, and how that kind of ties into the overall endorsement for the manifesto.
Well, I think the sort of there there are a couple of different advantages of having an interest group. I think, as sort of Alex suggested, I think an interest group, there's a sort of the practical side of having an interest group, which it creates a forum in which MEPs can cooperate. And there are other sort of practical advantages of having an interest group. I think the other sort of big advantage of having an interest group is that it sends a sort of a political message about the importance of that interest, because I think there are lots of people who who try to influence the Parliament and MEPs, but it's done on a sort of a bilateral basis, and there's a difference between that type of engagement and organizations that have got to the point where actually MEPs think it's sufficiently important an issue that they're going to work collaboratively together across different political groups. And so that's with an interest group, it sends a sort of an important political message about how important a particular interest is viewed. So which is and that's a political message which is important within the Parliament, because these group of MEPs are telling, by having an interest group and being a member of that interest group, they're telling their colleagues in Parliament that actually RMDs are important, and that's a message that's also sent to the other institutions. So they're also saying to the European Commission, we as a group of MEPs representing different political parties and different countries, we think that RMDs are important, and you, the European Commission, should pay more attention to RMDs. And a similar message, it allows us to send a similar message to the member states as well. So those are the main two sort of advantages of having an interest group, are that the practical side of it, and then also it's the political side of it, just raising the importance of RMDs politically within Parliament, but more broadly within the EU.
Thank you. I think that's helpful to put there, because for us it all sort of ties together, but it's not very clear to see where exactly one is going with this endorsement. And this is one of the reasons why also we are so closely working with the internal communications department within EULAR to make sure that we are able to showcase that these MEPs are advocating for RMDs, that this is something that's important for us and important for them, because ultimately we need to build up relationships here. And the MEPs are endorsing the manifesto because the issue is important to them, but they are also endorsing it so that they can be seen endorsing these kind of important issues, so that they can get more exposure. So it's quite important for us to make sure that they are out there. I think maybe one final point that we can address, if there are no questions at this point, is why it's relevant for us to please log things into the SharePoint platform, because we've been having conversations about that, and some of you have been very good about this. We've heard from other sources that things are being done, but there's nothing in the SharePoint. And I just wanted to highlight that this is our main way of knowing what exactly you're doing, because we don't want to have to chase all of you. You're all very busy people. You have your own things going on, your own plans. But for us, it's important to understand what is going on and how we can help. Because perhaps if your organization doesn't have the resources, or if you haven't had any luck, maybe that's a point where you could let us know, and we would then be able to reach out to a specific MEP that you think is important but hasn't been responding to you, and kind of support you in that sense, but not duplicate efforts that are already working very well on your side. Anything on that, Franz? Like, I think we have our list, and we've identified people that we saw as priority based on the previous composition of the interest group that we had, but we are not necessarily going very wide now. We were going more deep into the people that we knew we had spoken with before and that would be interested, versus going to MEPs that we have no idea if they would have anything beyond a general interest in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Alex has also put in information into the chat a little bit about the European Parliament. Would you like to?
Yes, this is just more for, it's a more friendly view on the Parliament, because of course the EU bureaucratic system is very complicated, and it's in the form of infographics. Maybe it helps you a bit in getting a clearer picture of this institution.
Okay. So I would ask now, is there anything even outside of what we have suggested as questions that we could possibly address now? Because I think the point about the language of the emails was very important, and it's not something that we necessarily discussed internally all that much. Anything else that you would like to ask us about what we're doing as well, potentially even outside of it?
No, what I would like to add to what you told, everything, is that we are also going to send the letters to the people that are heading the lists for people who can be chosen for the European Parliament. So that's more than just the MEPs in the European Parliament itself. A few of them are going, so we are targeting the ones in the Netherlands with the political parties who have been presented. I think that's very important. And we are looking at a lobbyist who works for other things for us to see if they can also do something. She is busy in The Hague, but what I've learned there is that there are all kinds of interactions. So we hope to get more attention, but as you have already explained, it's a difficult, busy time, and people do not have a lot of time. So yeah. I hope we can make a difference with that. We'll have to see. But thank you for your help, and we'll try to make something of it. We're busy, so yeah.
Thank you, Geraldine. That's also helpful for us to know. I think that goes a little bit actually beyond what we are able to do ourselves to contact the list of candidates, because there are very, very many. So I wish you all the best of luck with that. And please, if there's anything that we can do, you can always let us know. Or you can get Margaret, who is essentially our future boss, to do it for you, and she'll make sure that we do it.
Okay, thank you.
Grant, anything else that comes to mind? Because I'm not seeing any further questions.
No, I think the only thing I would just say is if anybody, on that sort of lessons learned point, I think we sort of absolutely, I think it's great that there's consensus that those sort of that the materials need to move in a certain direction. I think that resolves a potential little dilemma there. So it's very helpful getting that sort of clear steer. And then the only other thing is just to say, listen, if anybody again has any additional thoughts about ways in which we might sort of revise the approach, whether it, in terms of the second phase, then don't hesitate to get back in contact with us, because any feedback is super helpful.
As I think that is definitely the point that we most kind of struggle with, that if we don't get any sort of feedback, we are not able to advance, and we're not able to tailor it in ways that are helpful to the rest of you as well. So anything you send to us is helpful. And you can always reach us directly at the publicaffairs@eular.org inbox. We monitor that daily, so please just let us know. And we'll see what we can do about supporting you in additional ways. We'll have a look at the social media information, and we'll let you know once we're able to put that on the SharePoint.
I also see Karina writing. Okay, great. Now I see the comment. Great. Thank you, Karina.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So if there are no further questions at this point, then thank you all for coming. I think this has been very helpful for us to hear as well about what kind of things you struggle with and what has been helpful. And if there's anything we can help with further, please just let us know.
Thank you for attending. Have a great remainder of the day, everybody.
Yes, thank you,
you.
and have a great day.
Thank you,
Bye.
Geraldine. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you
Thank
Have a
very
great day.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.